Anywho, joining Native Land Pod now is the Massachusetts Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. She has served as the Commonwealth's 45th Attorney General since 2023. She's a member of the Democratic Party, and before that, she was a member of the Boston City Council. Madam AG, thank you so much for joining us. We're very pleased to have you. Welcome home, as we say around here.
Welcome home.
Thank you for having me.
I know you're super busy, so I'm going to kick us off with the question. All my colleagues have a lot of questions, so I'll be quick with my questions. I think one of the heavy things that's big on our minds right now, we're seeing what's happening this week with ICE in Charlotte. And our co-host Bakari's neck of the woods. And you've been on the forefront fighting the Trump administration on a lot of this. You seem to be at odds with the U.S. State's attorney there in Massachusetts. I've seen you guys had a few moments of back and forth over what's happening there. But one thing that you've really been out front on, and that's TPS holders, temporary protected status. Massachusetts, which I was not aware, has one of the highest Haitian populations in Massachusetts.
Outside of Florida.
Yeah, I didn't know that, Andrew, outside of Florida. And you have been really out front with protecting that community of Haitians and Venezuelans, even going as far as joining a lawsuit against the federal government, who's essentially going after what we call sanctuary cities, where people are allowed to live freely and not being disappeared off the streets, but they're holding hostage funding, basically trying to punish some of these cities. Can you let us know what is the latest in that particular fight and where that stands, particularly as we see what's happening in other cities across the country?
We are doing a lot to protect immigrants and frankly, to push back on a cruel immigration policy that we're seeing, not just in Massachusetts, but as you said, across the country. And they would have folks think that the immigration policy is about promoting public safety. It is the exact opposite. It is about perpetuating fear in our communities. It's also not only perpetuating fear, those who might come forward to report a crime are less likely to do so. It's absolutely undermining the trust between law enforcement and communities that have been built over decades, and having just the opposite effect. And I will just say, with no transparency and very little accountability for the egregious tactics that ICE is using in our communities. If I had my state police conducting operations as ICE is right now, there would be transparency, accountability. I would be called to every agency to speak up for their tactics. And here you have no accountability whatsoever. So we're doing our part to push back, doing a lot of know your rights training, filing a lot of litigation. We've filed several litigation efforts, I should say, on protecting status, including TPS for Venezuelans, Haitians. We have a large Haitian population here in Massachusetts. And so much so that if we were to deport every Haitian in Massachusetts, our elder care system, our PCA care system, our healthcare system would come crumbling down. And so there are real economic consequences. In addition to that, cultural contributions, of course. And frankly, we're making it crystal clear that these policies do nothing to promote the well-being of our citizens, do nothing to bring about economic prosperity, and absolutely nothing to address the cost of living crisis that we're seeing in Massachusetts and in this country.
That's right. General, I coming from Florida, having been born and raised in Miami, I actually, one of the key stops that I made when I was running for governor of Florida was to Massachusetts to rack up some endorsements of some of the Haitian leaders in your state, oddly enough. General, you have the distinction of being only the second African-American elected statewide in Massachusetts, behind Edward W. Brooks, who I knew through my former boss, who was his chief of staff for a number of years when Edward W. Brooks was in the United States Senate. I am curious to know whether or not the legal maneuverings of this current administration in Washington, D.C., very specifically the U.S. Attorney General's office, has in their targeting of your fellow Attorney General, Letitia James of New York State, if that targeted, very cruel, unsubstantiated attack on her has caused or created any kind of a chilling effect amongst your fellow Attorney Generals attorneys general across the country, you all have been on the front lines. In fact, when we couldn't look around anywhere, D.C. or any other community around the state and find a front line, the attorneys generals were out there holding this administration accountable and standing on the side of law and justice. But I am curious to know whether or not you all have experienced any kind of a chilling effect, or what concerns it causes you to see this administration personally go after defenders of democracy and of law and of justice, such as yourselves as attorneys general.
I appreciate the question, and I stand on his shoulders as well as Deval Patrick's, right? Folks who came ahead of me in Massachusetts, who paved the way. And I used to be an attorney for Governor Patrick, so we're quite close in fighting the fight. And I will tell you, I am inspired by them and all the other unnamed Black folks that I stand on their shoulders, especially Black women. I was recently in Montgomery, Alabama with Brian Stevenson, talking about the wrongful conviction work he's doing and what we could be doing here in Massachusetts, and taking in, obviously, all of the sites that he continues to create to lift up our stories. I got on a plane and I came back absolutely inspired. So yes, there are targets on the backs of AGs, only Democratic AGs, of course, who are stepping up in this moment in time, targets on our back. But I've been leaning into it and saying, bring it on. Inspired by the history of my folks, inspired by the history here in Massachusetts, and inspired by the stories of real people that without us would not see relief and accountability, wouldn't have SNAP benefits, wouldn't have a public education, wouldn't have a clinical trial for pediatric cancer if we didn't step up and fight the fight. And so I know many of my colleagues feel the same. We, of course, have AG James's back all day, every day. But we know why we do this work. And I would add one personal layer for me is I'm very faith-driven. I name that everywhere I go. I know not only who I am, I know whose I am. So I'm just praying more, knowing that my God goes ahead of me, behind me, and all around me. And I think in this moment in time, we need to lean on our personal stories, our history, and our faith.
I love that. And I want to please excuse me, Deval Patrick, Governor, for that blatant omission when I talked about only one of two statewide. Of course, there is Governor Patrick. I appreciate the correction.
No, I was running to correct you, Andrew. Don't worry.
Thank you. I know you were. I had to get it in there before you started.
Madam Attorney General, I love you. I adore you. For those of you all on Native Land who don't know, we were in Iowa, in a cold Iowa. And she was pregnant, and we were out there eating cold pizza and knocking on doors for then presidential candidate Kamala Harris. So shout out to that baby that was in your belly.
That's right. Who's going to be 6 next month? So we were running the streets 6 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. Let me ask you just a personal question, because I feel like I know you and supported you throughout the way. But people don't know that when they see you and they see your smile today, that everything don't always go right. In 2021, you should have been, as we thought, the next mayor of the city of Boston, and things didn't work out for you. Talk about that defeat and how that spurred you on to be able to do the great things you're doing now. I mean, whether or not you're talking about SNAP benefits, or you're talking about children who aren't in school because they're afraid of ICE, or all those things, it did not happen if you didn't have that defeat and were able to gain some moment of clarity, I guess, relying on your faith. So how did you get knocked down and get back up again?
Definitely my faith. Even in that loss, I tell folks, it's your perspective, right? I flipped the loss and saw it as an opportunity. And I said to God, okay, if that wasn't it, then where are we going next? And I think it's really important. You're going to have losses, but if anything, I learned more about myself during that race. I learned that I care deeply about politics and government, helping people and not harming people. And so when the opportunity came along to run for Attorney General, I said, do I want that job? And let me tell you, everything works out as it should, especially when it's connected to something bigger than you and when it's not about you. And so this work of service is not about me, but it's not just my faith. You know my personal story. I've had so many defeats along the way. You know, when I was 8 months old, my mom died in a car accident, going to visit my father, who was in prison at the time. I didn't even meet my father until I was 8. And so my brothers and I, we bounced around. We lived with my grandmother, who did the best she could, but struggled with alcoholism at times. And when she was struggling, we were in a foster care system or with a relative. And then my dad would get out of prison. I'd meet him for the first time when I was 8, but he wouldn't live to see me graduate from Princeton. I talked to him one morning. He died the same evening when I was 19 years old. And then fast forward, my twin brother, Andre, would die while in the custody of the Department of Correction at the age of 29 as a pretrial detainee as a result of receiving inadequate health care. So I sit here today. My middle name is Joy, so I have no choice but to stand in that. But it comes from my biological mother. And in addition to that, just reflecting on all that loss and thinking about how do I use this job that I'm privileged to have to break other cycles of poverty, criminalization, mediocrity for other families in Massachusetts and families by our work outside of Massachusetts. So it's purpose-driven work. And I'm already breaking those cycles for my two beautiful boys. So anything that comes my way now, I'm just like, bring it on. Because if I got through all that, I know I'll be okay going forward. And I think this is our time to remind our people not to be ashamed of their stories, to be vulnerable in it, because it gives you tremendous power. So when you come across a professional loss, it's not that. It's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to keep moving ahead. And who knows where you might end up.
Attorney General Campbell, you talked about your legacy and the shoulders you stand on. I can't help but to notice the picture of Muhammad Ali you have on the wall behind you. And I want to bring that up just for a moment, because I think it's important for people to understand how many knockout blows you've given to this administration, the Trump administration, with almost 24 lawsuits against the Trump administration. Would love to talk to you about how you feel about that record. And now that we know that the Trump administration is continuing down the very treacherous path of dismantling the Department of Education, including outsourcing the work of the Civil Rights Division there, I'd love to hear about the work that you are doing and leading with states' attorneys general around DEIA.
I really appreciate that. And I have Muhammad Ali because I feel like in this moment in time, he's like my muse, I guess. And Fannie Lou Hamer, too, both of them, and maybe Kendrick Lamar right now. I'm just relying on all of them in so many different ways. And I tell folks here in Massachusetts, we're small, but we're a mighty state. And we punch above our weight every day. And I feel like Muhammad Ali punching above our weight. We have now 41 lawsuits against this Trump administration. They tried to come for $3.24 billion in Massachusetts investments. Our lawsuits have protected $3.02 billion of Massachusetts investments. So who your AG is in your state matters. And most of these lawsuits are across state lines to protect DEI and DEIA initiatives and to do it unapologetically. There is nothing right now, even as we sit in this conversation and on this platform, there is nothing that this administration at the federal level has done that has made DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, unlawful. It is still lawful. So if anything, we're telling folks not to succumb to their fear, but to keep exercising their leadership, and us AGs have their back in the education context, in the employment context, you name it. We're also fighting for public schools and public education. The $3 billion I mentioned, they tried to come for close to $200 million of funding for our public schools here in Massachusetts, which would not have opened on time and delivered educational services for our students and our educators if we didn't file that lawsuit. And we have another lawsuit, of course, against the dismantling of the Department of Education. So we'll continue that. But all to say, not only do we need to keep punching above our weight in this moment, AGs have, I think, the most impactful tool to fight back, because litigation in particular is what we need to hold them accountable.
That's excellent. I know we also have a question. We like to hear from our Native Land Pod community. We have a question on veterans and how they are being protected or not so protected at the hands of ICE.
Greetings, Native Land Pod. My name is April from Atlanta. I absolutely love your podcast. I want to thank you for your comments on Veterans Day. We definitely want to praise our veterans and thank them for their service and their sacrifice. I have several members in my family that have served this country. My question is, are you aware that there are immigrant veterans that are currently sitting in detention centers and are facing deportation? One of those people is my loved one who signed up in the military, served this country, and in spite of that is facing deportation to his native country. It is not right, it is unjust, and I would like to know your thoughts about it. How can we bring greater awareness to these veterans that could be facing deportation and are currently sitting in detention centers? Thank you so very much.
Attorney General Campbell, your thoughts.
First of all, thank you for lifting up that story, because I think people often, when we're talking about this work, will refer to some spreadsheet and just numbers. These are real people. These are Americans or folks who want to be in this country because they love this country. And in this case, obviously, veterans. So in the context of even the SNAP conversation, this happened before Veterans Day. We had so many veterans that were reaching out to our office because they were food insecure and grateful for our lawsuit to protect access to food benefits for them, a population that's often forgotten. We're doing a lot in this space, including in the housing context and for folks who are returning in the mental health space, job, employment, you name it. We have no partner at the federal level whatsoever when it comes to this work. In name, they may say, oh, happy Veterans Day, but in action and substance, they're nowhere to be found. And the fact that we have folks who are willing to die for this country sitting in detention facilities is absolutely unconscionable and ridiculous. And I'm not surprised. The folks that they would say they're detaining, they're saying they're criminals. It's nonsense. We are not seeing that. If there are maybe one person they pick up with a criminal record, when you pull back, if they're able to obtain the information, it is folks who have no criminal record, folks who are actively seeking asylum, maybe they're veterans, or folks who've had cases dismissed. And so they're picking up folks who, for whatever reason, shouldn't be in detention. So what we're doing is doing rapid response, making sure people have access to lawyers. We're also helping with bond and making sure folks can be released on bond while they go through some proceedings. But at the end of the day, I think it's a reminder to everyone in this country, our AGs will keep fighting the fight, but our tools at some point will hit a wall. The trauma that folks are experiencing is real. And if you don't like the immigration policy coming from this White House, get civically engaged, get out and vote, do your part. It's equally important and it's just as powerful.
Well, I love you. I'm thankful that you came by and met some of my friends. I'm glad I was able to introduce you to some
backup
of my
singers.
You too.
Just saying.
Thank you so much.
I'm curious
It's a tough
before.
time right now, so we have to keep also taking care of.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
right.
glad you went there because I actually wanted you to end there, which is on. I'm just out of curiosity, wondering how you let your hair down. What is relaxation for an attorney general who's at war 24/7? It seems on every side. What does the calming down? Is it a reality show? Is it some yoga? Is it collard greens cooked Kamala Harris style?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to Thanksgiving for sure with my family because it will be all of that and then some more.
Yeah.
But it's running around with my kids, playing with them. It's starting my day in prayer, even before my kids wake up, before my husband wakes up, and just centering my spirit and just realizing I'm not doing this by myself and I'm certainly not doing it in my own strength. And it's also surrounding myself with positive people who know that, yes, it's hard, but rolling up their sleeves to say, what are we going to do about it? Not accepting it, right? And not lowering their expectations of what they should get from government or anything else. And so this space right here does that for me. So just surrounding myself with folks who pour into me, and I'm grateful. Then I have an incredible team. I work with folks who are dedicated to public service, and I'm inspired by them every single day.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.